1,000 years ago, a peasant named Kishichuro had a problem. It was the year 1267, and he needed to plant rice in his field near Kyoto, the heart of Japan. But it was raining, and if he planted his rice seeds in the mud, they'd just rot away. 4 days, Kishimoto sat inside his shack, listening to the rain drumming on the roof. He prayed the skies would clear soon, but he also worried about what would happen when the rains finally stopped. The soil would be waterlogged and planting would be impossible, and that meant no rice. No rice meant no food. And without food, his family would surely die. So when the sun finally broke through the clouds, Kishimoto raced to the fields, grabbed a wooden spade, and began digging. Day after day, he worked feverishly, trying to get the water out of the mud. Finally, when his back was aching and his hands were blistered and raw, the ground was ready. Panting, he dropped into a squat and put a handful of rice into the soft earth. Then he covered them over with dirt, stood up and bowed deeply to the east. "Please grow," he whispered to the sky. "We need your help." Then he did the only thing he could do. He went home. Kishimoto's story isn't an epic tale of war and glory. It's not a story most people know. But without farmers like Kishimoto, there would have been no samurai, no armies, and no great battles. Samurai were warriors, yes, but they were also farmers. Theirs was a quiet, hard life. They grew their own food. They maintained their own equipment, and they followed a strict code of behavior. They weren't allowed to steal or lie. And they had to show respect to their elders and to anyone who was more skilled than them. Most of all, samurai were trained to master themselves. In fact, one of the first lessons a young samurai learned was how to sit still and quiet while focusing on his breath. This practice is called zazen. Zazen was important for a warrior because it taught him how to control himself. It made him alert and calm at the same time, which is exactly what a samurai needed to be in battle. And it's also exactly what we need to do right now to take a moment for ourselves in the midst of our busy lives. Close your eyes and focus on your breathing for just a few moments. Notice each inhale and each exhale. Let your muscles go slack. Now let's take a deep breath together. Inhale, exhale. Good. Now let's continue on our journey. When a young samurai was sent to live with another family in a different province, he would carry these two things with him, a sword and a rice paddy. Wherever he went, he would build a small plot of land to grow rice. Why? Because the samurai knew that growing rice wasn't just a chore, it was a way of training his mind. It taught him patience and diligence, and it helped him stay grounded. The smell of the wet earth and the feel of the sun on his skin reminded him that even though he was a warrior, he was also part of the natural world. When the rice was harvested, the samurai would hold a small ceremony before eating it for the first time. He would place some of the uncooked rice on a small altar and bow deeply. He would cook the rice and eat it very slowly, savoring each bite. He understood that every grain of rice had been formed over millions of years from the tiny spores of phytoplankton in the ocean. Every grain of rice was a miracle, and the samurai never forgot that. But while the samurai toiled in the rice paddies, a barefoot boy was being born across the sea. The year was 1162, and the boy's name was Minamoto no Yoritomo. He was destined to become the most powerful man in Japan. In fact, he's the reason why samurai became the most powerful class in Japan. When he was 17 years old, his father died and he inherited his title of shogun. That means he was the military leader of Japan. This wasn't some desk job in a palace. The real power in those days was on the battlefield. And to prove he was worthy of his new title, Yoritomo led his troops to victory against rival clans. He was a brilliant strategist and a fierce fighter. His men loved him and respected him. As the years passed, Yoritomo's power grew. He defeated the Taira clan, a powerful family that had ruled Japan for generations. He established a new government and set out to create a new order in Japan. His greatest achievement was the establishment of the Bakufu, a military government that would eventually rule Japan for over 700 years. But despite his many accomplishments, Yoritomo was never a tyrant. He understood the importance of balance. He knew that to be a true leader, he had to be strong, but also compassionate. He had to be decisive, but also open to new ideas. And most importantly, he had to be humble. Yoritomo was a great example of Bushido, the way of the samurai. He was a warrior who also valued peace. He was a leader who was also a servant of his people. He was a man who lived by a strict code of honor and integrity. After Yoritomo died, his son Hojo Tokimune took over the shogunate. Unlike his father, Tokimune was not interested in warfare. He preferred the finer things in life, such as poetry and calligraphy. However, this didn't mean he was weak or ineffective. In fact, he was considered one of the wisest shoguns in Japanese history. He understood the importance of preserving peace, but he also knew when it was necessary to fight. During his reign, Japan experienced a period of great prosperity. The economy flourished and the arts thrived. But Tokimune never forgot the lessons of the past. He kept a close watch on the daimyo, the feudal lords who ruled the various provinces. And when any of them got out of line, he wasn't afraid to use force to put them down. One day, a daimyo by the name of Hajj Seijinaga decided he was tired of living under the thumb of the shogun. He assembled a small army and marched on Kamakura, the seat of the shogunate. Tokimune was furious. This was a direct challenge to his authority, and he wasn't going to stand for it. Without hesitation, he raised a large army and marched out to meet Seijinaga. The two armies met in battle and fought fiercely. But in the end, Tokimune's forces were victorious. Seijinaga was killed, and his army was scattered. From that day forward, no daimyo ever challenged the authority of the shogun again. Tokimune had proven that even a peaceful shogun could be a powerful ruler. As the centuries passed, the role of the samurai changed. They became less warriors and more administrators. But they never lost sight of their core values. Bushido, the way of the samurai, became an important part of Japanese culture and continues to influence Japanese society today. Now, let's visit a magnificent white castle that stands proudly in the heart of Japan. It's called Osaka Castle, and it was built by Toyotomi Hideyoshi, one of Japan's most famous samurai. Imagine walking through the massive wooden doors and stepping inside. The first thing you see is a huge courtyard, surrounded by beautiful gardens. The air is filled with the scent of cherry blossoms and the sound of birds tweeting. You walk further into the castle, you notice the intricate details everywhere around you. The walls are decorated with beautiful paintings and the floors are made of polished wood. There are shelves filled with ancient scrolls and weapons, and each room seems more elegant than the last. But the most impressive part of the castle is the view from the top floor. You can see the entire city of Osaka, with its bustling streets and towering buildings. It's a reminder of the power and influence of the samurai who once ruled here. Finally, we find ourselves in the middle of Edo, present-day Tokyo. It's the early 1600s, and the streets are bustling with activity. We're about to enter the shogun's court, the seat of power in all of Japan. The shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu, sits on a raised platform, surrounded by his advisors. He's dressed in elaborate robes and a golden crown, and his face is expressionless. Around him, samurai move with precision, their footsteps silent on the wooden floor. The air is thick with incense, and the only sound is the soft whisper of silk and the clink of swords. The shogun's court is a place of honor and duty, of tradition and ritual. It's a world apart from the rest of Edo, and we're lucky to be here to witness it. This is the end of our journey tonight. We've walked in the footsteps of samurai, both great and small. We've seen the power and the grace of the shogun's court. And we've heard the quiet wisdom of a peaceful shogun. As we close our eyes, let us remember the lessons they taught us. Let us be like the samurai, always striving for balance and harmony in our lives. Let us be like the shogun, always seeking wisdom and understanding. And let us never forget the importance of peace. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May your nights be peaceful and your days be filled with the beauty of Japan. Our story begins in the midst of this chaos. Young Oda Nobunaga charges into battle, brandishing a broom instead of a sword. He may be young, yet his ambition burns bright. He lashes out with wild abandon, sweeping away the opposition. For long, he claims victory, sending the defeated soldiers scampering away like frightened animals. Nobunaga stands triumphant, chest heaving, eyes gleaming with fervor. Around him lies the evidence of his conquest, a pile of twigs and leaves neatly swept into a corner. But here's the twist. This isn't a prelude to a grand battle. It's just Nobunaga, practicing in his backyard. Why? Because our young hero has a problem. He yearns to be a samurai, but he doesn't have one crucial thing: a father. You see, in those days, being born into the right family was everything. If your parents weren't samurai, well, you were out of luck. And Nobunaga's mom, a lowly farmer, couldn't change that. Then came the day that changed everything. When Nobunaga was 7 years old, his mother married a samurai named Hisamatsu. They moved into a small house on the outskirts of town, where Nobunaga would often sneak out to play by himself. And what did he do when left to his own devices? You guessed it. Pretend he was a mighty warrior roaming the countryside, slaying fearsome beasts and winning great victories. But as you can imagine, other kids didn't think much of this imaginary friend of his. Oh, they'd laugh and jeer and call him names, and that hurt. So Nobunaga retreated into himself, burying his face in books, devouring tales of heroes and glory. Now, the turning point came when Nobunaga was 12. He'd been sent to live with his uncle, who happened to be a daimyo, a local lord. Finally, he was surrounded by samurai. But guess what? Nobunaga was still an outsider. Sure, his clothes were nicer now, but under the surface, he was still that bullied kid. Then came the opportunity he'd been waiting for. There was a big party at the castle, and all the young samurai were gathered together. This was Nobunaga's chance to shine. He got himself all dressed up, put on a brave face, and started talking up a storm. And do you know what happened? They loved it. These young nobles had never met anyone like Nobunaga. He was loud and boisterous and full of energy. And before long, he was leading the pack, organizing games and competitions. It was like he'd been born for it. That's when something interesting happened. Nobunaga caught the eye of a certain samurai named Takigawa, who became his mentor. Under Takigawa's guidance, Nobunaga trained hard, learning the skills he needed to become a real samurai. But while he excelled at swordplay and horseback riding, he wasn't so hot at the whole Bushido thing. Remember that code of conduct samurai were supposed to follow? Yeah, Nobunaga struggled with it. He was too impulsive, too quick to anger. In fact, once he got into a massive brawl and almost killed someone. That's when Takigawa had to step in and save him. He understood Nobunaga's fiery spirit, but he also knew that to succeed, Nobunaga needed to learn control. So Takigawa gave him a simple task. Meditate every morning before sunrise. It wasn't exactly glamorous, but it was important. You see, samurai weren't just fierce warriors. They were also expected to be disciplined and composed. Meditation was supposed to help Nobunaga find that balance. But here's the thing, Nobunaga hated it. He'd much rather be out there training or planning his next big move. But he respected his mentor, so he followed his advice. What he didn't know was that this simple act of obedience would shape his destiny. As the years passed, Nobunaga rose through the ranks, amassing power and influence. And as he grew older, so did his responsibilities. He had a wife, then a son. And with each passing day, his duties as a daimyo weighed more heavily on him. But amidst the chaos of war and politics, Nobunaga found solace in a surprising place, his garden. He'd escape the noise and bustle of court life and lose himself in the peaceful surroundings. It was there in the tranquil beauty of nature that Nobunaga discovered a new kind of strength, the strength to endure. Now, you might be wondering why a guy who spent most of his time yelling and sword fighting needed to learn about endurance. Well, let me tell you, being a samurai wasn't all battles and glory. Sometimes it meant enduring incredible hardship. During times of war, samurai were often forced to go for days without food or sleep, facing hunger, exhaustion, and constant danger. And let's not forget the emotional toll. Samurai were expected to keep their emotions in check, showing little emotion even in the face of death. It wasn't easy, but Nobunaga learned to find strength within himself, to push through the toughest challenges. And you know what helped him? Yep, that meditation practice he once hated. All those years of sitting in silence had taught him how to control his mind, how to focus and push through the pain. It was a skill that saved his life more than once, and helped him forge ahead in a world that demanded the best from him. Okay, now, let's get back to the show. We find Nobunaga at a pivotal moment in his life. He's inherited his uncle's land, and is poised to make his mark on the world. But guess what? Other ambitious young lords are eyeing the same prize. Soon, Nobunaga finds himself locked in a power struggle, forced to flee for his life. But here's the thing, he refuses to go quietly. Instead, he makes a daring move, surrendering to his rival, Hashiba Hideyoshi. But don't get the wrong idea. This isn't a defeat, it's a calculated risk. See, Nobunaga knows that Hashiba isn't interested in ruling this land. He's too busy plotting his own rise to power. So Nobunaga makes a deal. He offers to marry Hashiba's daughter, and in return, Hashiba agrees to support Nobunaga's claim to the throne. It's a clever move, but it's about to get way more intense. Nobunaga's got a bunch of powerful enemies, guys who won't hesitate to cut him down for a chance at the throne. One of them is Yamana Sogo, who's been after Nobunaga's land for years. He's cunning, ruthless, and patient, willing to wait in the shadows for his chance to strike. When Nobunaga least expects it, Sogo makes his move. Sends assassins to take out Nobunaga and his family. But guess what? Nobunaga is prepared. He'd been expecting something like this. When the assassins attack, his samurai are ready. The battle is fierce, but it's over quickly. Most of the attackers are killed, but one gets away. And Nobunaga is furious. He wants revenge. The stage is set for a showdown. Nobunaga and Sogo are on opposite sides, each with his loyal samurai by his side. Tensions are high, swords are drawn, and the clash is inevitable. This is Japan. It is the year 1582. You are listening to a legend. They say that once upon a time, in a distant land, many moons ago, lived a young boy named Hideyoshi. Now young Hideyoshi had two things: spirit like a flame and a face like a monkey, which is why they called him Monkey. He wore straw sandals, patched up with more patches. His hands were rough and calloused, his hair unkempt. He smelled of the fields and sweat, was born a farmer, a nobody, a boy of no name. Yet it was Hideyoshi, the nameless boy who would one day become the most powerful lord in Japan, even briefly. Even for a little while, becoming the first of only 3 men to rule all of Japan under one banner. And it happened like this. Do you see those mountains? Those tall, jagged teeth against the sky? Well, there's a valley between them. And back then, that valley was a war zone. And Hideyoshi grew up hearing the screams of battle and the clash of steel. The wars were fought over land and power, and the victors claimed the best lands for themselves. Then when the rains came, they stood ankle-deep in mud, clinging to their lord's banner, fighting tooth and nail for an inch of dry ground. Hideyoshi ran away from that life. At night he snuck out of his village and hid in the mountains. There he befriended a band of outlaws, who taught him how to survive, how to live off the land, how to fight. Hideyoshi learned fast. He was quick with a blade, and stronger than anyone his age. And before long, the outlaws took him in as one of their own, though they still joked about the day they'd be caught, and Hideyoshi would have to run away again. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the valley, another man was on the move. His name was Oda Nobunaga, and if Hideyoshi was a flame, then Oda Nobunaga was fire incarnate. He attacked relentlessly, burning all in his path. When his armies moved, they moved like a storm, fierce and unstoppable. Wherever he went, villages burned and cried out. Nobunaga cared little for such things. In fact, when Oda Nobunaga heard about the lawless band of mountain men, he decided to go hunting. He found them sleeping in their mountain hideout and slaughtered every last one of them except for one. He cut the man down and propped him up. "Tell me," he asked, "who was your leader?" The outlaw coughed up blood. "I was," he whispered, and breathed his last. Nobunaga unsheathed his katana and walked out, leaving the dying man behind. Then he saw him, sitting on a rock, watching the whole thing, and he saw the wild light in the boy's eyes. "You," said Nobunaga, "you come with me." So Hideyoshi left his old life behind, his past buried in the dirt of the mountains. And he served Oda Nobunaga with all the strength and cunning he possessed, rising higher and higher. Soon, he was no longer a nobody, a boy of no name. He was given a new name, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and he became Nobunaga's right-hand man, his most trusted general. Together, they conquered province after province, castle after castle, until all of Japan trembled at the sound of their names. At last, Oda Nobunaga stood at the edge of the world, poised to conquer the whole country. But then something strange happened. One night, Nobunaga held a banquet for his greatest lords, and among them was Hideyoshi. They feasted on deer meat and sashimi, drank sake until it flowed like water, and watched girls dance under paper lanterns. When the feast was done, Nobunaga announced he wanted to see who was fastest with a bow and arrow. Hideyoshi stepped forward, but before he could take his first shot, Nobunaga suddenly turned around and plunged his katana into Hideyoshi's chest. Blood spouted from the wound, staining the fine silk of his clothes. The other lords watched in silence, unsure what to do. Nobunaga pulled his sword back out, letting Hideyoshi's lifeblood trickle down his arm. "This is what a real warrior looks like," he said, pointing his sword at the others. "Do you think you can beat me?" Of course, none of them could. And so, Nobunaga continued his conquest, ruling all the while from his wheelchair. For in that moment, he had been wounded, struck by a bolt of lightning, forever paralyzing him from the waist down. But this doesn't mean that Hideyoshi was finished. In fact, his story was just beginning. See, Nobunaga never noticed that when he plunged his sword into Hideyoshi's chest, Hideyoshi reached up and grabbed Nobunaga's wrist. Hideyoshi had endured and waited, playing the role of the loyal servant. And when Nobunaga wasn't looking, he used his other hand to grab an arrow and plunge it into his lord's neck. Nobunaga convulsed, then slumped forward, his head lolling to the side. Hideyoshi calmly drew his sword, cut off his lord's head and threw the body into the river below. The other lords gasped, then scattered like rats. Delshe knew they'd return with armies, so he didn't wait around to find out how strong those armies were. He jumped onto Nobunaga's horse and rode away, taking Nobunaga's severed head with him. He paraded it around the countryside, showing it to everyone. "Oda Nobunaga is no more," he shouted. "Long live Toyotomi Hideyoshi." By the time the other lords returned, Hideyoshi had already taken over the provinces, including Oda Nobunaga's castle. And soon, all of Japan fell in line, pledging loyalty to their new supreme ruler. So now we come to the paradoxes of Hideyoshi. How a raggedy boy who smelled of the fields became the most powerful lord in Japan. How a man who grew up eating rice balls could host the greatest feasts in the empire. How a man who wore straw sandals could one day walk among silk cushions. We tell the story of his rise, of how he made peasants into samurai, how he built Osaka Castle, a monument to his power, big and bright and shining, and how he wrote poetry and designed exquisite gardens, but also how he banned the poor from wearing silk. How he loved sake, but also kept prostitutes out of his castle. How he hosted tea ceremonies with the finest porcelain, but also chained up guests to ensure they wouldn't steal it. How he led armies in battle, wearing silk armor, while his samurai charged into the fray in cotton armor. Some say he was a tyrant, that he crushed those beneath him, that he took away the freedoms of the samurai and forced them to live like peasants. But others say he was a visionary, that he brought stability to a chaotic land, that he lifted men out of poverty and gave them a chance at greatness, that he set the foundations of a new Japan. Yet for all that Hideyoshi accomplished, for all that he achieved, he was not satisfied. You see, even when you rule all of Japan, there are still mountains beyond those mountains. And Oda Nobunaga dreamed of crossing those mountains and conquering the whole damn world. So when Hideyoshi looked at a map of Asia, he saw China, he saw India, he saw the riches of the East, and he thought, why not? Let's conquer that too. He raised a massive army, 500,000 strong, and he marched them on Korea, crushing all in his path. But then something happened. The Korean king fled, and his generals proved stronger than Hideyoshi expected. Battles raged across the peninsula, but Hideyoshi's armies kept getting pushed back. Still, he refused to retreat, even as his soldiers died, even as the rain soaked his aging bones, even as the fleas bit his wrinkled skin, even as the fever burned his eyes. In the end, Hideyoshi didn't die on the battlefield. He died in shadowy corridors, his legs stiff and aching, his belly distended, his eyes blank and glazed. He was 61 years old. Some say his advisors poisoned him. Others say he died of natural causes. But in the end, it didn't matter. All of Japan mourned the loss of their supreme lord, and perhaps most of all, his wife, Lady Yodo, who dressed as a man and avenged her husband's death by jumping off a tower. Hideyoshi left behind a 5-year-old son, Tadami Jin, a baby really, a child who could not rule, who should not rule. And so his advisors took over, running the country for the child, pretending that everything would be all right. Still, Hideyoshi's legend remained the barefoot boy who climbed to the top of the highest mountains, who conquered 1/6 of all of Japan, who defeated rivals and usurped his lord, who raised armies and broke hearts, who ruled a land of samurai, the first peasant-born man to ever do so. And so the tale is told and retold, keeping the memory of Hideyoshi alive even after 400 years. because even though he may be gone, his spirit lives on in the hearts of men. Now fade into the gentle murmur of the wind through the bamboo grove, carrying listeners softly into the next section. Here's one of my favorite parts of the show. When Ritsurin approaches Himeji Castle, you see it through the eyes of someone who's never seen anything like it before, a wide-eyed child. As the camera drifts along the top of the castle walls, we can see how ingeniously Himeji was constructed with clever hiding spots and secret passageways, which we'll talk more about in a moment. But first, let's see what it looked like when someone visited for the very first time, just like you. The white heron lands softly, gently touching down on the moat's dark waters. Its feathers are ruffled by the wind, much like those of our hero Ritsurin, whose travels have brought him to the foothills of this great castle. He adjusts his travel-worn cloak and prepares to make the long climb up the mountain. On the way, he passes a stone lantern. Many travelers pause here to catch their breath and make a wish. So too did the poet Bishu Matsuo, who wrote these characters that read, "Do not be discouraged by the steep path ahead. If you would reach the temple at the mountain's top, each step will bring you closer to your goal." And so it is with all journeys. Whether we're traveling across the country or through life itself, we may encounter many obstacles. But if we keep moving forward, we'll eventually reach our destination. Following the mountain road, Ritsurin soon arrives at the foot of Himeji Castle, where he pauses to admire its beauty. In fact, he won't enter the castle today. Instead, he'll rest here and write a poem inspired by what he sees around him. Join him now as we read some of his famous verses. White as a heron's wings, Himeji Castle stands still. Built for movement, its winding corridors confuse enemies. Its creaking floors betray footsteps. In the distance, a drum beats, calling retainers to action. With sword in hand, they hurry to the top of the castle, their steps echoing through the empty halls. And then there is Okiku, a young servant accused of theft. She denies the crime, but her master doesn't believe her. In a rage, he throws her into a well. Now her ghost wanders these grounds, counting the stones that surround her prison. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. She reaches the surface only to slip back down into the well again, and there she begins her count anew. 1, 2, 3. She has 9 lives to make amends for her crime, but she may never reach the 10th. Himeji is considered one of Japan's most beautiful castles. Because of its pristine white walls, its appearance was chosen to represent the purity of snow. This was no accident. Like most Japanese castles, Himeji was not only a place of defense, but also a symbol of power. The color white demonstrated to visitors the wealth of the ruling lord and the ingenuity of the castle architect. In fact, it took about 42,000 men over a period of 18 months to construct the outer wall alone. That's why it is such a shock to learn that less than 100 years after it was built, the castle was abandoned. In 1867, after centuries of relative peace, Japan's feudal era came to an end, and with it, the need for large, expensive fortifications disappeared. Since then, it's been lovingly preserved and is now open to the public. Over 10 million people visit every year, but now, it's time to explore its lavish interiors. Be sure to watch your step as you pass through the entrance. The entire castle is on stilts to prevent flooding. This is especially important because beneath the castle, a labyrinth of tunnels lies hidden. So far, 19 of these underground passageways have been discovered, 7 of which lead to wells used to collect rainwater. But researchers suspect that others connect to hidden exits, allowing defenders to escape if the castle ever fell under attack. Inside, the castle is decorated with beautiful artwork. However, much of it was added during the Edo period, which began in 1603. This painting dates from that time and shows a ceremonial guard changing at the castle. What you're looking at is called a tate-e, a type of folding screen that unfolds vertically like a scroll. These were often placed in front of buildings to provide shade or used inside as room dividers. Quality of the art varied depending on its location. For example, domestic servants would have had to make do with inexpensive screens made of hemp paper, while those in charge would have enjoyed more elaborate examples like this one, which depicts a nobleman riding a horse. What do you notice about the details in this painting? The artist has taken care to include them. His mount is a fine Akeltic, a breed of horse known for its endurance and strength. Look closely at his clothes. Notice how the different layers of silk are painted, showing both the texture of the fabric and the shine of the gold brocade beneath. Even the quiver of arrows slung across his back seems almost tangible. In medieval Europe, tapestries were often used to decorate castle walls. But in Japan, sliding doors known as shoji served the same purpose. They're made of thin paper stretched over a wooden frame. When closed, they form an opaque barrier, diffusing the light that falls on them, turning the whole room into a lantern. When opened, they reveal what's behind while still providing privacy. Just as the artist took care to include small details in his paintings, the castle architect paid attention to every part of the building's design. If you look carefully, you can see that the edges of the floorboards are beveled. This makes it easier to walk across the creaking floor without catching your foot. Such thoughtfulness is evident throughout the castle. For example, the thickness of the walls varies according to their height. The higher the wall, the thicker it is, making it more stable. These sturdy stone foundations allowed the builders to create towers up to 8 stories high. Today, we marvel at their skill. But remember, they didn't have any modern tools. Everything was done by hand. We know that the castle's builder was a brilliant engineer, but what about his rival? How might they have attacked? To find out, we'll head to the top of the castle wall. According to historical records, enemy forces approached Himeji Castle from 3 sides, attacking the south, east, and west gates. Each of these assaults was repelled, although the battle was fierce. Those who defended the castle fought bravely, but they didn't have to. Thanks to one crucial element. Can you name that structure? Pause the video here if you want to make a guess. In defending a castle, it's important to have a clear view of the surrounding area. This helps spot potential threats early and formulate a plan of action. That's why many castles are built atop mountains or hills. From there, it's easier to see for miles in every direction. Himeji Castle is no exception. From the top of the main tower, you can see everything. Just look at how high above the trees it is. In fact, from this vantage point, you can spot enemies long before they can reach the castle. Thanks to this early warning system, the defenders had time to prepare and protect the castle. This is why even though Himeji Castle was attacked several times, it was never captured. Its commanding position made it virtually impregnable. So far, we've learned a lot about the history of Himeji Castle and the strategy behind its construction. But what about the people who lived here? Life in a castle could be both luxurious and challenging. Let us find out what it was like by following the castle staff as they go about their daily routines. You hear the sound of hammers ringing as a group of carpenters make repairs around the castle. Nearby, a cook stirs a giant pot of soup, preparing food for the lord and his retainers. A tea server pours hot water over finely ground matcha powder, creating a frothy green tea that will help keep everyone awake during long hours of work or study. Elsewhere, a calligrapher practices his craft, dipping his brush into black ink and painting elegant characters on a piece of rice paper. At the far end of the castle, a gardener rakes gravel into a perfect pattern, creating a calming scene of simple beauty. Life here is peaceful, but it's also hard work. The castle requires constant maintenance. From fixing leaky roofs to sharpening swords, there's always something that needs to be done. But the staff take pride in their work. They're proud to serve their lord and protect their home. You approach the castle, your sandals whisper on the polished planks. Each turn leads to another, carefully designed to disorient. Hidden rooms, trapdoors, arrow slits. Below the castle, wells were dug to collect water in siege. Some believe tunnels stretched outward, connecting hidden exits. Now it's time for you to explore the castle for yourself. Are you ready? Let's begin. Today we visit the heart of Japan. We have seen Tokyo from above. We have heard its urban sounds. Now we come below. We are in the city's underbelly. We explore the subways of Tokyo. The subway comes alive at rush hour. On the platforms, the crowds press close. Sea of faces looking down at phones or away. There is little talk. Even smiles are rare. When the train arrives, people surge forward. They push politely, patiently. All want to board. On the train, everyone stands. Some hold on tight to poles. Others sway to the rhythm of the rails. It is hard to breathe, but no one seems to mind. We ride through tunnels under rivers, under roads. Above us, metal wheels sing against metal tracks. Around us, the air grows cold. Smells of sweat, of old seats, of Tokyo dirt. At Shibuya Crossing, the crowds pour out onto the street. People stream into the night. Some chase neon signs. Others hurry home. We join the flow, weaving through the throng. We find a ramen shop. Its sign glows red and green. Inside it is warm and bright. Slurping noodles, sipping hot soup, we feel the comfort of community. Then we hear a cry, a child lost from his mother. Then another voice, soothing, guiding, bringing them back together. Later in Shinjuku, we see an office worker, weary, shoulders slumped, stumbling home after a long day. A young boy runs ahead, then turns to help his father. Together they walk on. On the Yamanote line, we meet an old man. He wears a commuter's badge. For decades, he has ridden these trains. He knows every station, every timetable, every sound. Soon he will retire, but he rides today. With a smile, he tells us about his job, about his family, about Tokyo nights. Then he grows quiet, watching the city fly by. As he does, we think of all the journeys of our lives, how each one brings us closer to what we're meant to be. And when the ride is over, we step off the train into the dark. The old man bows. We smile and wave. He does the same until we are gone. We wander through quiet neighborhoods along moonlit streets past flower shops and cafes upstairs with chipped paint across. Bridges over canals through parks where trees and statues stand like old friends on paths where lovers whisper and children laugh. We pass temples where prayers linger in the air, shrines where wishes are written on wooden boards, gardens where koi glide in moonlit pools. Everywhere neon signs bloom like flowers, casting their colors on the pavement. In doorways, old men dream in the warmth of the setting sun. We hear the music of taiko drums, the laughter of salarymen, the chatter of women on their way home. Everywhere, the rumble of trains fades into the night. In Odaba, we find a giant Ferris wheel. Its lights shimmer on the water. On the shore, lovers walk hand in hand. Couples stroll around the wheel. Some hold cotton candy. Others share popcorn. All look up at the sky, at the wheel, at the dreams it holds. At the top, two people sit in a cabin. They watch fireworks bloom over the bay. They kiss. We turn away, remembering moments when the world felt new, when hopes soared high, when love was found, when dreams took flight. In Roppongi, the neon pulses, the bass beats deep, the crowds move close, body to body, laughing, dancing, drinking. Above, on the streets, the wind whispers secrets through the wires, through the signs, through the trees. We pause to listen. We hear the heartbeat of the city, its pulse, its rhythm, its endless stories. And for a moment, we are part of this living, breathing thing that never sleeps. We walk to a kasaka, where a wedding procession winds through the night. Musicians play festive songs. Guests in colorful kimonos dance and laugh. The bride and groom bow. They smile. They promise to love each other forever. We join the celebration, remembering our own beginnings, the vows we made, the dreams we shared, the hopes that led us here. And in this moment, we know that love like this can light up any night. In Ginza, we find a jazz club. Its windows glow with warm amber. Inside, musicians play cool notes. The piano sings, the bass thumps, the drums whisper. Couples sway, they sip, they dream. In this intimate space, music touches hearts, stirs memories, paints new emotions. Outside, neon signs flicker, casting their shadows on the pavement. Lone guitarist strums a ballad into the night. A young woman dances alone. She twirls, she leaps, she spins, a silhouette of joy against the glowing backdrop. We stop to watch, remembering nights when we danced without a partner, when we sang without an audience, when we dreamed without a map. We wander through Shinjuku Gion, a garden of dreams. Cherry blossoms fall like pink snow. We pause to catch their scent. Stone lanterns stand like old friends. Koi glide in moonlit pools. We watch them drift beneath weeping willows. Above, a mother comforts her child. Two lovers feed each other sweets. An old couple watches them with a smile. Everywhere, people seek solace and joy in the beauty of the night. As dawn approaches, we find a noodle shop. Its windows steam with the promise of hot soup and soft noodles. Inside, a chef works with quiet grace. His hands move fast. His knife sings against the cutting board. Soon he will serve us a bowl of ramen, rich and comforting, a perfect start to the day. We savor each bite, feeling the warmth spread through us. In a nearby park, a man practices karate. His movements are strong and precise. The air is filled with the power of his spirit. A young boy watches, his eyes shining with admiration. We feel the strength of discipline, the focus it brings, the power it unleashes. As the sun rises, we climb the Tokyo Skytree. From its observation deck, the city shimmers with new life. The rising sun paints the skyline with gold. Tokyo wakes up, stretches, yawns, begins its day. Below, cars hum on the roads, trains rush to the stations, people hurry to their jobs. Above, the wind whispers stories through the wires and the trees. And for a moment, we are at the top of Tokyo, ready to face the day with courage, with hope, with a grateful heart. You may remember us telling you the story of Kenzo Tange, the architect who designed the Olympic Stadium and defined modern Japan. If not, you can watch it here. And as you watch, you may notice something familiar: the quiet presence of Tokyo itself. You may hear the city's gentle heartbeat, feel its steady pulse, or witness its unwavering strength in every frame. That's because Tokyo isn't just a place, it's a character in our stories, a silent partner in our dreams. And just as Tong's buildings touch the sky, so does Tokyo touch our hearts. Thank you for walking with us through the heart of Tokyo, for listening to its stories, and for sharing its dreams. May the quiet strength of this city inspire you to reach for the sky, just as Tange and Tokyo have done. Until next time, keep reaching for your dreams and let Tokyo's spirit guide you. Goodbye.